everybody. Welcome to the premiere of Going Nuclear, presented by Buzz Sports CLE. I am your host, Ethan Greenberg. Alongside of me is my co-host, Madison Delaney. Madison, how are you doing this evening?
I am great. I'm excited to get started. I'm excited to talk some Cleveland sports. Ready to dive in.
Yeah, it's fun to to talk Cleveland sports and all because well, you got to have a good time with it because actually watching it is oftentimes painful. And I think folks, what we want to do here is go in depth here, talk about your Guardians, your Cavaliers, your Browns, and give you some ins and outs. See what the thoughts are on how the team is doing, where they're going to go from here, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's roll. Let's get it on here. And folks, you can follow us on Twitter. I am at egreen4325. You can follow Madison on Twitter at madtravels24. So Madison, the Guardian season just came to an end, falling a little bit short there in the playoffs to the Yankees in 5 games. What are your initial thoughts on the Guardians' overall performance this season?
Obviously, there's a little bit of disappointment, right? You get that
Right.
far, you want to win, you're so close, you're up a game, you have 2 chances to close it out. But it's hard to be mad at them. They're the youngest team in baseball, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lot that they have, I think, going for them in the future. So there's a lot to be excited about. I guess as we do with Cleveland sports, we always look to the future, right? It's the tendency we have.
It is the famous quote, as I say, there's always next season, and that's tough to swallow sometimes. It really is a tough pill to swallow when you're a Cleveland fan. You've been rooting for so long, and you get so close, yet you're oh so far away. This year they completely outperformed where everybody thought they would be. They win the division, 92 victories, overtaking Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit. Well, they really weren't a factor, but to overcome what they had were up against was fantastic. Um, how exciting were the playoffs, though? I mean, the short run we had, those games against the Rays were just fantastic. Were you glued to your TV set like I was?
Yeah, you have to be there. I feel like they made a lot of people turn on the TV that maybe weren't watching them through the regular season. It's a joy to watch them play. They seem like they have a good time. The come from behind victories are just, second to none. You love to see that. It's always really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that you can get into it, I mean, the whole thing, the stories that you build, the Oscar Gonzalez thing. I mean, coming up to the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song was fantastic. I mean, it's easy to like this group, and we'll get to it in a minute. You know, let's compare how easy it is to enjoy and attach ourselves to this group, the Guardians, versus the Browns. I mean, it's a complete polar opposite situation we've got going on here. Um, in the loss, how much do you put on Francona for starting Savali in Game 5 as opposed to putting Bieber back out there?
Yeah, I think hindsight is always 2020, I guess. I don't necessarily want to question him. I think the stats on people with 3 days rest, I know the Yankees pitcher obviously also had 3 days rest, but generally it's not great. And I feel like, maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like in the playoffs previously, Bieber had some short rest, or we had a starter. It might not have been Bieber that had some short rest, and then we got crushed in that game. So it's hard to know. I think maybe if he was only going to pitch an inning or two, maybe you throw him out there if that's what you're trying to get to as a bullpen game. But hindsight's 2020. It's easier to say now. What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I was obviously concerned going into it, and you saw the first batter, and you see him reach on a walk, and he came back. He struck out Judge, so that was fantastic. But I mean, I watched the pitching sequence to the leadoff hitter, to Torres, and they've got the K zone up on the screen.
Yeah.
One of those pitches was a stinking strike. I don't
Yeah.
know what those umpires were looking at, but all of a sudden he's behind in the count and he walks him, and there we go. A 3-run blast. You're behind the 8 ball right off the bat. Now you're thinking, hey, this team has come back how many times during the season? What, like 29, 30
Yeah.
in that vicinity of the number of comeback wins they had in the season. So you feel like, okay, they're equipped to deal with this. They've got the bullpen to keep it close. And I mean, you lose 5-1. So you take away the first inning, you really lost 2-1 in the game. And I mean, that's all in all. I mean, I kind of sucks to always have to be like, oh, let me try and find the positive out of the negative. But I
That's what
guess
we
that's
do.
the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you see in the news here, this just came out, I believe, yesterday, about Jose Ramirez having to undergo surgery in the next couple of weeks? Apparently, from what I read, he injured the ulnar collateral ligament in his thumb back in a game in Los Angeles in June. He opted to keep playing. So as far as I've read, it's not going to affect him going forward in preparation for next season. But just how much does that uh, help the team morale to see a guy like that continue playing despite the injury? Now, and let's not talk about one Mr. Dangerous number 6 last year for the Browns and injuries and playing through them. But uh, you know, to see that kind of a clubhouse leader, he saw right before the season starts, he signs basically gives the Guardians a hometown discount
Mhm.
to stay in Cleveland. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah. Hardly ever happens. Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, we traded away Francisco Lindor, and
Mhm.
I mean, the players we got back in return really came through for us this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we're talking about Jimenez,
Mhm.
and I believe we're also talking about Gonzalez.
Mhm.
And I mean, that turned out phenomenal for us. And best of luck to Lindor and the Mets. I mean, hey, you go out there with Tommy Trumpet, it's all good, man. It's all good. Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Something about beat the Mets. I'm not sure what it is, but we got Slider anyway, so it's all good. One of the things that we saw throughout the Guardian season was the lack of attendance.
Mhm.
Now that we're looking back at it, we're stepping back and we're saying, okay, we're going to go into next season. Do you think that there's going to be a fevered pitch to get back out to Progressive Field?
Hopefully. I mean, it's always nice to have a chance to get out and support. To be honest, I think maybe in the beginning of the year, how the Cavs are doing will have a lot to do with that. I know when I'm in town, I usually try to hit both because you can just walk right across the street. If the Cavs are doing well, I think that gets more people to the Guardians games. We'll see. It also depends on the weather, as always, in Cleveland for the early games. But I think if they start strong, I'm sure that the attendance will pick up at least a bit. um, might help to spend a little money on a big bat or two to maybe bring some people in.
Right. And I'm not sure who's on the free agent market this summer, but the Guardians finally got this minority ownership
Mm-hmm.
added into the puzzle. I believe he may be involved in. I should have done my research on this, but I'm pretty sure it's Crystal Palace of the English Premier League. So if he can infuse some cash into the team, do you think that guys like Antonetti are going to make the move to bring in some bigger bats, or do they say, "Hey, wait, we're winning with youth. Look what we did last season." I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, it is definitely tough to balance the two. I mean, they do develop talent so well that they could trade a couple prospects for a bigger star if you want. But then on the flip side, you've got really good team chemistry as it is. You don't want to throw that by bringing in someone who potentially has a big ego, whatever the situation is. So, I mean, knowing how to strike that balance is kind of what makes, a front office great. So I guess we'll find out how great they're going to be.
Yeah, they have definitely overachieved when it comes to developing talent. The pitching staff, man,
Hmm.
Carl Willis is invaluable as the pitching coach.
Hmm.
The way they have developed all these Cy Young Award winners, Cliff Lee, Sabathia, Kluber, and Bieber, unbelievable, just unbelievable what they have been able to accomplish to this point here. And with that in mind, talking about the pitchers, would you be willing to give up any of the pitching to add a bat?
I mean, I think you have to consider it just because they are so good at developing pitchers, and that's one of your bigger assets. I mean, depends on what you can get back, I guess. But I mean, I would probably be more okay with giving up a pitcher than prospects, probably, just because I do feel like I have a lot of trust in their ability to develop someone coming up.
I gotcha. So then here's one more key piece to the puzzle. This year, unlike last season, we had Tito in the dugout all year long. I'm not sure now, I'm not certain exactly what's going on in his personal health, but do you think he's going to be back next season? I've seen no indications that he's not going to be, but do you believe he's going to be back?
I hope so. I guess.
He's an amazing manager.
Yeah, I do hope so. I mean, hopefully his health is okay. I know obviously it's taxing. He's getting older. I guess we'll see. Hopefully, making the playoffs and getting to where they got gave him a little taste and a little itch that he will, want to scratch and come back and try again. Um, Maybe walk off with a World Series winner, maybe.
Hey,
Um,
I would love that. No
right? No
doubt about it.
complaints. Yeah,
No
we'll
doubt
see.
about it.
Yeah.
So we've got a long way to go on Guardians. Now, also, I'm just going to throw this out there because this is a hot topic. This was a hot topic all throughout the season. Are you okay at this point with Guardians? Are you okay with Guardians? Did you make it through a season? Are you still calling them the Indians? Do you call them the tribe? And where do you think people stand on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know my dad in particular still goes with the Indians, and he was pretty adamant that he wouldn't watch, and they got him watching. So that's good news. I call them the Guardians, and I'm okay with the Guardians. I don't know that that's what I maybe would have picked. I think it's a little too close to the Indians, so it's pretty easy for me to look at it and think Indians right away when I see it on a jersey. As far as are people okay with it, I mean, it is what it is at this point. You're either going to get on board or you're not going to get on board. And if you're not on board, you're probably missing out on some fun.
That
What are your
yeah.
thoughts? Yeah.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, I wanted to see them so bad. I mean, like, obviously they had a lot of success.
Yeah.
I want to see continued success. And I want to tell somebody that was like, I'm not rooting for them. I want to tell them, well, then sit down. You're not,
Yeah.
don't come to the championship parade.
Right.
Don't bother because we don't want you there. If this is our team. These teams, they're Cleveland sports. We've been rooting for them no matter what their name is. Okay. And I get it. The there's a lot of things that are polarizing. And so I get it. You can stand wherever you want to stand. It's all good. But like, it's a name at the end of the day, at
Yeah.
the end of the day. So okay, so the Guardians, we've got them. Their season is finished. So long till spring training. We got the Jose Ramirez surgery, and next thing you know, we'll be talking about the Grapefruit League and the Cactus League come sometime in February when the catchers and pitchers report, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go from there. But what happened last night? We got a fresh start. It's time for some Cleveland Cavaliers basketball. And that is something that is shaping up to be very exciting. Last year, this team went above and beyond the expectations. They win 44 games, go 44-38, and make it into the play-in tournament, only to get knocked out right away. It was a tough draw. They lose to Brooklyn, and then they lose to Atlanta. But along the way, they were at the All-Star break. They were way up there in the standings, and in the top half of the Eastern Conference. And then they ran into some injury troubles.
Yep.
First of all, just in general, how you feeling about the Cavs going into the season? What you got?
It's hard not to be excited. I mean, you have two young All-Stars. Mobley will be an All-Star. You add Mitchell, who's another All-Star. I mean, it's hard not to get excited about the season. I think it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. I think they looked pretty good together in preseason. I don't know that they'll have too much of a mesh time needed, I guess. So I'm excited. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree. And I watched last night, and, okay, so we're going to put it out there. They lost last night, in case you didn't know. They lost 108-105. It's been a tough week in Cleveland sports with the L's piling up. Overall, they look pretty good. I mean, Donovan Mitchell scores 31 points and gets 9 assists.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty big right there. And in addition to Mitchell's 31 and 9, you had 4 other players in double figures. And you know who the second leading scorer was? You're going to hear this right. You're not mishearing the last Chetty Osman with 17 off the bench. Mobley comes up strong, 14, Allen 13, and LeVert had 10. So, I mean, that is some good contributions from all of those guys. Were you surprised to see LeVert in the starting lineup, or did you kind of expect that?
I kind of expected it. I feel like he played pretty well in preseason. I thought he distributed really well, which I think is something that we need with two guards that are also, high volume, high touch kind of players. So I do think he earned the spot. The only reason I thought maybe we would go Okoro is just because you want to give the second unit a little bit of a boost. And that's why I thought maybe we would lean that way. And maybe we will on some nights. I don't know, when we need some defensive looks. I was really surprised at how many minutes Okoro played, just sitting at, I think he had 12 minutes, something close to that. Jetty actually outplayed him in terms of minutes, which was a little bit surprising.
Right. Well, and as part of the contribution of Jetty's numbers last night, I guess, is because of the unfortunate loss in the game, which was Garland going down in the second quarter. Gary Trent Jr. comes to make a play in the backcourt, and I guess poked him in the eye. And causes a cut on his inner eyelid. Like, how does that happen?
And then
he needs to cut his fingernails.
It was a foul.
He needs to cut his fingernails. What's the story?
Yeah, they used to make you do that in Y-ball. I was a little shocked that they were surprised that was called a foul. I'm like, he's only bleeding profusely from his eyes, so I guess it's fine. You didn't touch him, I'm sure.
It's a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound. And I'm reading that he didn't practice today. Garland didn't practice today. He was back at the hotel. His left eye was swollen shut. So although they haven't ruled him out for Saturday, and Saturday's a couple more days away.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he's not going to play.
Yeah.
Against the Bulls on Saturday. I really don't know. Haven't seen anything that talks about the timetable for this type of an injury and what it is. We're not talking about the broken orbital where they can go in the Phantom of the Opera mask or anything like that. I don't know. But if you don't have, okay, so now you talk about meshing, right? And you as a collegiate, playing basketball on a collegiate level and seeing how teams have to mesh, and you have injuries at different times. How is it better or worse that this happens now in the beginning of the season as opposed to a midway point where everyone's really clicking and found their role?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways it's maybe better. I'm assuming they probably did a little bit of mixing of lineups in preseason more than they did, or they would like going into the season when they kind of have their rotations a little more set. I'm assuming guys practice with some other people that they wouldn't necessarily, start with, things like that. You probably mix and match your starters a bit more leading up to the regular season. So for that reason, maybe there's a little more chemistry. Like Jetty and Donovan Mitchell seem to be doing pretty good. I think he had like 4 assists to Jetty, maybe 3 of his 9. So I think you see a little bit of a benefit there. He seemed to trust him a lot, actually, which is good, especially since he hasn't been here for very long. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of hit or miss. Hopefully he's not out too long and we can get him back sooner than later. But I do think he's probably going to be out against the Bulls.
Yeah, I would probably count on that happening. And so, all right, looking bigger picture here. Before the Donovan Mitchell trade, I believe the sports books were talking about the Cavs at 42 and a half wins. Okay. Less wins than they had last season. Now,
Yeah.
the people at the sports books, they know what they're doing because they tend to win the money. They tend to keep the money and stay in business. So to give them credit where credit is due, um, where do you think 42 and a half is too high or too low?
It feels too low to me. I don't know about you. I think it's too low.
Yeah, and that was before, and I don't know if they adjusted the total upon the trade for Mitchell, but let's just assume that they didn't, and I'd have to look on the sports book. But even going into it before that, I still thought it was low. I felt like that's just not giving much credit where credit is due to
Yeah.
what the Cavs did last season. They It really wasn't again until they had injuries that they ran into problems there.
Yeah.
Mobley and Allen create a formidable uh, defensive line back there. I mean, that's pretty tall task. Yes, the pun was intended there. And so okay, so we're saying all right. So this is a little bit low. How many wins? What do you think the Cavs have in them?
I think they get to 50. I
All right,
really do. And I think for a couple of reasons. I think
all
one,
right.
the tanking is going to be on. I think everybody wants, I forget his name. Let's see. I have it written here somewhere. That number 1 prospect, wherever it is, Victor
Oh,
Wembanyama.
Wimbenyama, yes. Apparently, he's got very
Um,
long arms.
yeah, everybody wants him. He's a alien, I think is how LeBron described him, more than a unicorn. He's an alien.
Gotcha.
So, I think everyone's going to want them. So I think you pick up some wins pretty easily there from people who are willing to fall over. I think, as always, the top of the conference, I mean, both conferences really are probably in coast mode. They just want to get to the playoffs healthy. They're not necessarily as focused. I do think you maybe lose a little bit. I think the Cavs caught some teams off guard last year. I don't think they do that this year. I think that was pretty evident last night. Toronto seemed to be pretty up for that game. But I do think as the season goes on, they're going to care less about it. Similar to how the Cavs did when they had LeBron is, we can finish wherever we finish. Once we get into the playoffs, it's on.
E-
Different.
e-
Yeah.
exactly. So, I mean, the teams that we're talking about really at the top were the Celtics. They're the defending Eastern Conference
Yeah.
champions. With their issues with the coach, with Udoka being gone for the entire season, suspended for the entire season, and having someone come in. Now, granted, at least that change that all occurred before the season started, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not a mid-season issue. But how do you think that impacts them? I mean, me personally, I think they overachieved last year. To be quite honest, the Celtics
Yeah.
did to make it all the way to the finals. They caught some breaks. Um, and to lose in 6 to the Warriors was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the Eastern Conference in general is so weird. Like you think the Nets should be great. They seem to shoot themselves in the foot consistently over and over again. You know, I think this is why Boston made it through because they did that. Philly can't seem to get it together to make it out of a couple playoff series, which is crazy because they have a ton of talent. Miami, you know, they're just hard nosed. I think they just work harder than most teams, but they're probably not going to outwork Boston, which is why I think you had a decent battle there. But yeah, I mean, Boston with their coaching situation, it's going to be probably fine. I don't think it's going to play too terribly large of a role, probably, unless some additional stuff comes out and it starts getting really media attention on all of that, and then players are having to answer questions. I don't know if it'll affect them otherwise. I think they probably put together a pretty good staff, and I'm sure that the guy that they promoted, and I forget his name, but I'm sure he'll take over fine.
Right. Now, so let's talk. So you touched on, we talked about Boston. You touched on the 76ers. And I mean, Harden came back looking like he was in a little bit better game shape than he had been. They dropped the dead weight of Ben Simmons because I don't know what's up with that guy. Something's going on mentally, not that something wasn't working. And so you got Tobias Harris and Maxey.
Maxey's very good. I think very, very good.
But how many times now? Doc Rivers, an interesting coach. He gets a championship in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up with the Clippers, and the Clippers just consistently could not get over the hump. You had Lob City going on. You bring in, I mean, what do we make of that? I don't. I mean, where does Rivers fit as the coach? How much? At some point, do we think that his effectiveness comes into question when it's crunch time?
Yeah, I mean that's the big one, right? Everyone, when it comes down to bright lights, how do you perform? And it does seem like he's got a trend going of not being able to get his teams to show up, come playoff times. I think what's his record in game deciding series? I feel like it's not good. I know it's not good, especially over the last few years. I wouldn't throw out a number without knowing it wholeheartedly, but I mean, it's hard to trust him in the playoffs now. Like, I mean, until you see it, it's I'll believe it when I see it, I guess, that kind of situation. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he knows his X's and O's. I'm sure he's probably pretty decent at motivating his players. I do think there's maybe a question of, are you getting the most out of your players when it comes to playoffs? Playoffs are just so different because you're playing a team so many games in a row. They're really locked in. They play you completely differently than they do in the regular season. They'll try to put pressure on you. They'll put Harden in situations where he has to defend more, similar to like how, we did with Steph Curry when we played in the finals. They're doing things like that you're having to counter as a coach and try to come up with a game plan around. How do I take him out of that situation? Do I hide someone on somebody else? That kind of thing. And I don't know that he's made those adjustments. And I think that's one of the big knocks on him is, in-game adjustments for sure, but game-to-game adjustments in a series is also a pretty big thing. And if you're not able to do that well, then you're going to have a hard time making it from, series to series.
Right. And then you look, I mean, I got to think the other team that's at the upper echelon that I guess we'll put 2 teams up there. You got Milwaukee.
Yep.
Who's just a couple seasons removed now from their championship. And you can't, exclude Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
You can't exclude Brooklyn because they certainly have the firepower.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go out on a limb I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think there's a lot of egos in Brooklyn. There's a
Mhm.
lot of egos in Brooklyn, and I don't know how far their talent is going to carry them. Plus, there's ego and there's injury issues. I mean, how much time has Kyrie missed? How much
Yeah.
time has Durant missed, for that matter? And how much time has Ben Simmons missed?
Yeah.
So,
How much he's barely played.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy what you got going on there. And then overall, if you look in, and also I should mention, because I don't want to count them out either. You hit on it earlier. The Miami Heat, Eric Spoelstra has done a fantastic job
Yeah.
with the group he has with Butler and Hero, etc. I'm impressed with what he's done, and it's not just a matter of. I think he's had success with those guys, and for the people that are like, well, he only won a championship or whatever it is when he had LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. I think he has certainly proven that he is a good coach, a good motivator uh, for Miami and for Pat Riley and such. Even though I don't particularly care for the Miami fan because they don't show up until like halftime or something like that.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like Eric Spoelstra a lot. I think I was one of the people that did not give him credit initially when he had LeBron because I was still bitter about LeBron.
Well, as we all are, as we all were at the time. I think that's fair. I think that's very fair to be to have not been giving him credit. If we turn our attention, okay, so now we've talked about the Eastern Conference. You look out west. Obviously, the defending champion Warriors are coming back loaded. They're
Yep.
just loaded between Thompson, Curry, Green, Poole, and I know I'm forgetting another key player in that rotation. Well, Wiggins.
Hmm.
I mean, they are just loaded, and they play a different kind of basketball. Um, it's very team oriented. Where does Steve Kerr rank in terms of head coaches with his run of success in Golden State?
That's a great question. I feel like it's a little bit like the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. Like, how do you know until they separate and then let's see what happens, kind of thing. Because I mean, he's had unbelievable talent. Obviously they're great, pretty much top to bottom on their roster. They've also developed a lot of that talent in house. They've drafted it, and they've not really done a lot in the way of trades so much as some of the other teams that have had to package players, ship them out to get some superstar in. So you have to give them credit for that. But it would be something I would want to see him without Steph Curry, see how that goes. I think we might see him without Draymond next year. It sounds like, and maybe that makes a big difference. I would be interested to see how that goes too with Draymond, as much as I
Right,
dislike him as a
right,
player,
right.
of course.
Um, you know, we look at some of these all-time greats and where you rank them. Okay, so you talk about in our generation, we're not to go back as far as Red Auerbach,
Hmm.
for the Celtics, but if we come more, we come up to the guys like Phil Jackson,
Hmm.
would have to be at the top of the list with 9 championships. Or did he have more? I think my brain is clogged. He got 6 with the Bulls, at least, and maybe did he? I don't think he was the coach for all of the championships
Yeah, with the Lakers.
with for the Lakers, but I mean, he did it with a lot of talent, and he had to put it together as a team. Um, because I think what Brooklyn kind of exemplifies, and Philadelphia to an extent as well. You can have all this talent, but if you can't play as a team, with
Yeah,
basketball is a team sport,
yeah,
if you can't play as a team, there's going to come a time when uh, talent can't overcome better teams with better efforts and more continuity.
yeah.
So I don't know. Will be interesting to see. And other than them, I mean, I'm just gonna be. It's hard. First of all, I'll say this: it's difficult to stay up late. I'm getting old, um, and these games that come on at 10 o'clock, that's about
Yeah.
bedtime for me. So I don't know. It's kind of tough. But the Lakers, I don't know. I'm really wondering about what they're going to be able to do if they can even stay healthy to do it. Have they surrounded LeBron and Anthony Davis with enough additional firepower to be able to play they want to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think LeBron said it, and maybe after the game a couple nights ago, like we have no shooters around on our team, no snipers, pretty much. And I mean, that's like what you need to make LeBron great. I feel like is a team of shooters. I mean, that's what we had, back in 2016. We had a bunch of shooters around him. It opens up a ton of driving lanes. Granted, he's getting older. He's not going to take people off the bounce quite as much. But I mean, I'm not particularly worried about the Lakers. I think they got to ship Westbrook out. If they don't do that, there's too much trouble in house, I think, for them to really go anywhere.
And what is the deal? I mean, I don't know what to make of Westbrook. He had crazy, crazy numbers in Oklahoma City. How can you? Can he be so? Was he actually that good, or were they that bad? What do you make of that for him to average triple doubles, not one season, but multiple seasons
Yeah.
averaging a triple double?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably part of it is spacing. It's a little harder to come by with the Lakers because they don't have as much shooting. And I mean, it's going to make it more difficult for everything. It's going to make it more difficult to drive and dish. It's going to make it more difficult to drive and just lay it in. That kind of thing. I guess that's it. I don't know. I mean, there seems to be some kind of mental block going on with him also. Or it's just the rise of social media and picking on him and it's getting to his head a bit.
It is amazing the rise of social media and how much access we the fans have to what's going on behind the scenes with the players. And that can be for better or worse. I mean, not everybody is a media darling like Isaac Rochelle.
Yeah,
We're not exactly.
Yep.
We're not all going to be like that. So it'll be interesting. And Dallas, they made noise last year in the playoffs.
I love
Doncic is just
crazy.
wow.
Crazy.
Wow. He is definitely going to be one to watch. And the Suns, I mean, have they missed their window of opportunity? Do they have enough between Booker and Paul and Ayton? Is there enough firepower there for them to make a run? I just don't see it.
Yeah, I want to say yes because they got my boy Cam Johnson, and I love him, and he played pretty well down the stretch last year. I don't know if he'll continue to excel in that role. We'll see, I guess. But I mean, Chris Paul's getting older. Everybody's starting to age out. The traditional stars. Booker is very good. He's always going to light it up. I feel like pretty much aren't going to have too many off days with him. Chris Paul just seems to get it done. I don't know. He's from around my hometown, so I guess I got to give him props, even though I don't necessarily love him either.
I gotcha. Now, all right. So we touched on it earlier. Let's revisit it here. So coming up for the Cavs, Saturday night, continue the road trip. We're in Chicago to take on the Bulls. The Bulls won their opener. They beat the Heat.
Yeah.
116-108. DeRozan, 37 points. And I mean, do you think he is playing above who he actually is, or is this who he's always been? I mean, he was good in Toronto, but he didn't have it when playoff time would come. He would kind of get stifled. Now, granted, LeBron kind of owned Toronto for the years that we would have been watching them. And he was in San Antonio for a little while, and they were in a down, in some down years after, with everybody aging out between Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, etc. Even with Coach Pops there. And how do we stack up against Chicago and going in there again without, without most likely without Garland?
Yeah, I mean, no Garland is going to make me nervous. I think, especially, without Ricky Rubio back, you don't have that steadying force at point guard to come in off your bench. Or, as I think JV was going to do, rotate Garland and Donovan so that one was on the court at all times. That's not really possible now. You got to get Donovan some minutes at some point, which, I guess we
Yeah.
have to. I don't want to, but we have to. We'll see how that goes. I think they don't have Lonzo, if I remember correctly. I think he's out. That helps. I feel like last year DeRozan really put up numbers against us though, and that makes me nervous. I guess we'll have. I'm not sure. I guess maybe Mitchell. I don't know who will guard DeRozan. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Who do you want to put on him? Do you want to put a little more size with LeVert? That kind of thing.
Right. Well, you hear coaches talk, and you've done some coaching as well as you're playing,
Mhm.
and they talk about players being multiple and being able to fill these multiple roles and have versatility. I guess would you kind of say that the Cavs have that in a few different players, like you said, LeVert,
Yeah.
and at least defensively, I would say Okoro.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like Okoro a lot. I know he's taken a good amount of flack, but I like Okoro. I want to go on record as saying I do like Okoro. I mean, he's not going to put up 20 points, but that's not his role, and that's fine, right? That has to be fine. People want him to put up 10, 15, 20 points. It's just not who he is, at least not yet. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I think they did well, Wednesday night was they had some rotations where they can kind of match up however they need to match up. If they need to go big, they can go big. If they need to stay smaller, they can match that. And they have a bunch of different people that you can throw out. They switch pretty often, maybe a little too often, sometimes for my liking at this point, or a little too easily, I should say. They give up the switch. But I mean, Mobley can guard almost 1 through 5. I don't know if I'd put him on a point guard yet, but he's getting there. He's moving his feet pretty well, and his length helps. I mean, even Jared Allen can switch out on a bunch of guys. So that versatility is going to help them a lot down the stretch. And you have some different options if someone's not working on DeRozan, for example. We can throw somebody else at him and see how that goes. So I think there's a lot of options there.
Right, right, I think the bigger staff has really this model is completely again, this is a polar opposite to what everybody is going to small ball. They went to the big lineup. They went to
Right.
the big lineup, um, which is anchored by Allen and Mobley. Mobley worked on his shot over the summer, hitting some triples. How much does that help? Because we've seen Jokic do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to help a lot. I read an article, I think it was Cleveland.com, about him being told Hall of Famer every day after he leaves practice, which I love because I do think he has that kind of ceiling in him. I mean, he's got kind of a KD build, and if he can start hitting shots like KD, then he becomes really unguardable. And he's obviously added some strength. He's got some muscle added to him. I think he's got more to go in that realm, but taking steps in the right direction is always encouraging. I like Mobley a lot. His spin move on Wednesday night down the lane, led the break, and then took a half dribble, and he was at the rim, was everything that I want to see from him. Just do that. That's what I want.
There you go. And how, maybe he needs to talk to Akeem, get the dream shake maybe
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, I
No,
mean, yeah, add it. I mean, he seems like the kind of player who every offseason he wants to add something. Kind of similar to, I think, LeBron's mindset, where he's like, okay, what do I need to pick up, this season, this offseason to be great next season? And I think he has that mindset. I mean, I think he comes from a family of coaches and basketball minds, so I think he's prepared to be that kind of person. Hopefully his brother's also that way, because we could use him turning into somebody decent.
absolutely, absolutely. I just want to throw out there. This was something I watched, and was it was just remarkable watching Donovan Mitchell split double teams.
Mm-hmm.
Watching him dribble through those double teams was amazing, and it makes me uh, think back to the Mark Price days. That guy just was phenomenal at getting through these double teams and creating shots. It was fantastic. Hopefully, Mitchell can have a career just as good,
Yeah.
if not better than Mark Price had. And then so we're on the road Saturday night at Chicago. We go
Mm-hmm.
to the Rocket Mortgage Field House to open things up at home against the Wiz on Sunday. The Wiz, they're still led by Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Wizards do. Feel bad for Beal. He's kind of been, you thought you had a formidable tandem between him and with Wall, and it just didn't come together there for them. And then next Wednesday at home, and we'll talk about this next week. The Cavs get to host the Orlando Magic and Paolo Banchero, and he had an impressive debut
Yeah.
for the Magic. In fact, from my notes, he got 27 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, 2 block shots. That's pretty
Stellar.
impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So now comes the sad portion of our program. Okay. I think we owe everybody, this is a responsibility of ours if we're going to talk about full blown coverage of the land, and I do mean full blown coverage of the land. I think it's our responsibility to talk about the Browns, this football team that we allegedly put out there on Sundays. Now we are losers of 3 straight games, and we got dismantled by the Patriots 38-15. I guess my question is, as we play the schedule game here and take a look at where this team is, this team has a lot of talent, but
Yeah.
how low can they go?
Well, they're finding ways to lose every week, it seems. I guess we'll hopefully not find any new ways to lose. The Jets game was certainly a new one. Blowing leads is becoming an art form for us, which is not great. They did mix it up against the Patriots and not really give us any hope with a lead. So I guess that was kind of them.
That was
Yeah.
good. I was, they had in the 80s and they had the cardiac kids, right?
Yep.
And in my other life, I deal with, you look at a lot of medical records, and I think of the term cardiac kids, a little heart attack, myocardial infarction kids, maybe, because it's just horrible. It's just horrible. And now here's the question. Do you think it's the players? Do you think it is the coaches? And one of our followers, as you could see, his thoughts their thoughts on the Browns in the bottom of our screen from the Factory of Sadness for Life. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining the show on our premiere of Going Nuclear, full blown coverage of the land, full blown losers. And you know what? I don't blame a fan for feeling that way. I just don't blame a fan for feeling that way. Okay, who's on the hot seat? If anybody, what do you think?
I never want to be a person that wants to argue, I think because of my coaching background, for someone being let go. But I do think there needs to be some changes. I think there's 2 things that matter a lot in coaching, and it's 1, what you know, and then 2, what you can get out of your players. And right now we're not getting enough out of our players. And that is likely a respect issue. There's probably not a lot of trust between the defense in particular and either position coaches, which may be the case, or the DC overall, Joe Woods, of course. And that is something we probably need to address. And I mean, there's something to be said for waiting till your bye week, whatever. But you also don't have the luxury of time. I mean, Andrew Berry made the trade for the linebacker Dion. Is it Lewis? I can't remember. Dion.
Yeah, I believe it's
Yeah,
Jones or James, one or the
Jones.
other.
Yeah, you're right.
Dion from Atlanta. Dion from Atlanta, not Deion Sanders though. But
Yeah, there you go. And with the, I guess, with the understanding that we want to make a run and we think we can make a run. So if that's the case, I don't think we can sit and wait on this until the bye week to make a change. Although, to be fair, if it didn't happen last week, it's probably not going to happen until the bye week, if at all. Which is a topic for another time, I guess.
right. I mean, again, as we opened the show and we talked about hindsight being 2020, and we're going to have to just wait and see how this all plays out. This year could be a wash, and it's going to be kind of crummy if it is, because we don't have much in the way of draft capital, having
Yeah.
put everything out that we did to obtain Deshaun Watson. Okay, so we don't have the draft capital, and what do you think about? We talked about, like, for example, Jose Ramirez giving a hometown discount. The Browns have paid some players some big money: Ward, Chubb, Garrett. What are your thoughts on just the overall philosophy of giving these guys these big contracts?
Yeah, I mean, I think up until they got their extensions that they earned it. I mean, Nick Chubb's one of the best running backs in the league. Myles Garrett's one of, if not the best D end in the league. Ward has disappointed a bit this season, and there may be a reason for it. All overrated. I mean, statistically, I think it's proven that neither of them are overrated. They're both pretty high in terms of stats, which generally, I know you can bend numbers a little bit, but in general, numbers don't lie.
Okay, and you talk about numbers, and that brings me to another question: analytics versus the eye test.
Yeah.
Are these coaches getting too much caught up into the numbers? You hear about, like Tony Grossi loves to press, on the whole thing. Take the three,
Yeah.
and Stefanski kind of pushes back on that.
Yeah.
Do you think that that analytics is going to go by the wayside eventually? And again, factory of sadness. This is good insight. Chubb is the new Joe Thomas, great talent, wasted, best player on the team, and that's sad. But
Hopefully he's
analytics,
not wasted. We got a little bit more of a window with Nick Chubb. Hopefully.
I hope so. I sure hope. Hope he doesn't have to suffer like Joe Thomas has, because he sure puts his heart and soul out there. Again, at what point does analytics get pushed by the wayside, or does it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can go numbers all the time. It's a little bit feel for the game and how it's going. I think one of the things that I've noticed as a trend recently is, in general, fans will go with like, oh, we should have done the opposite of what we did because it didn't work out. Like, it's easy to say that after it doesn't work. It's harder to make that call in the moment. Like the quarterback sneak, everyone wanted us to sneak it 2 weeks ago. We did it. We didn't get it. And like, that's, now it's like, oh, we should have taken the points. So it switches from, one thing to the next, depending on the outcome. And so, I mean, I do like numbers. I am a number driven person, but I do think numbers can sometimes skew the story. I think more in basketball, so I'll use a basketball reference. If you're out rebounding a team, usually you win. If you think about it, really, you're out rebounding a team because you probably have more opportunities because they're probably not shooting the ball well. So, like, there's reasons for all of that. So, like, rebounds do play a role. It usually does kind of indicate how you're going to do, but it's usually because of something else. And so kind of finding out, and I'm sure they have a bunch of smart people in that building that know all of that stuff and figure all that stuff out. But yeah.
So again, you don't hire. So here, this is an interesting take, and this is fair. You don't hire scientists to be football players, and you don't hire football players to be scientists. I like it. That's brilliant right there.
Yeah.
There's that clip they show of I think it might be Saban or something. What the hell is going on out there? And I ask myself that a lot. So moving forward to another thing. Um, okay, in Nashville, Tennessee, this is a hot topic here in Cleveland because they apparently commissioned a study. In Tennessee, they are pushing forward an initiative. It's got to get voted on to build a domed stadium for the Titans. It gets very cold there, um, and obviously for Cleveland being on the lake, there are times when the weather is quite crappy. You've got the wind off the lake,
Yep.
which Phil Dawson mastered, but can
No
prove
one has
tricky
to.
in the kicking game. D- Dome or no dome? Where do you stand?
I mean, I'm good with the dome. I think playing in the elements is a little bit overrated, in the sense that it hasn't really worked for us up until this point, I guess. So it's hard to say like, oh, we like the elements, we want to play in the elements. It's like, okay, well, you've had that chance since '99, and we have not done that great. So I like a dome. I'm cool with it. Give your kicker a fighting chance to be halfway decent, I guess.
Right. And the other thing is it's for economic reasons.
Yeah, that's
Because if
true.
you have a dome, we can host a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Um, I mean, even the saddest city like Detroit gets to host a Super Bowl, and
Yeah.
Minnesota hosts the Super Bowl, all in cold weather areas. They get to host it.
Yeah.
So
And that
so
seems
I,
to
I
be
get
the key to winning a Super Bowl lately with the Bucks and the Rams.
have the home field advantage. Absolutely, have the home field advantage. All right. Well, now just real quickly here, we're looking ahead to 2 weeks straight of AFC North. Um, AFC North opponents. We're in Baltimore this Sunday at M&T Bank Stadium. That's going to be tough against Lamar Jackson, and
Mhm.
then we'll be home on Halloween to take on the Bengals on Halloween night. Uh, as it stands, if the Browns were to somehow magically find their way to victories, both this week and next week, they would be in first place and magically. I mean, out of nowhere. I don't know. Do you think they can snag victory from the jaws of defeat in one or both of these weeks?
Yeah, I've kind of been in my head about it a little bit. I mean, I don't think, despite the score last week, that they're necessarily that far. I mean, it has been like a handful of plays again last week, aside Bill Belichick's different story. What I do think is maybe the defense in particular has not taken their competition particularly seriously. We've heard a lot about preparation, and they haven't played a ton of great quarterbacks outside of, I think maybe Justin Herbert would be the only one I would maybe go with. And I think they respect Lamar a lot. And I am very interested to see if they play at a different level because of that. And obviously, they've talked a lot about, preparing and doing it outside of your regular work hours, and all that's well and good. But, maybe Lamar actually sends that signal to them like, hey, you really do. Because it's either going to go really well and they're going to have, dialed in, really focused, or Lamar's going to run for like 200 and throw for 300 because of a broken coverage or two. Like, it's just how it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, last year we should have beat them in Baltimore, but for really pitiful quarterback play. We beat them in Cleveland, mostly probably because Lamar got injured. Had he not gotten injured, we probably would have lost that game as well. Baltimore has had its own problems. They blew a 3 touchdown lead against Miami. They had a halftime lead of 10 points over Buffalo. And then they also had a 10-point lead entering the fourth quarter against the Giants. So they're prone to their own issues. But I anticipate Harbaugh will have them ready. On that note, Madison, the title of our show is Going Nuclear. And, in sports, as I see it, in the media, you got guys like Stephen A. Smith, and they're constantly having their hot takes. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And uh, you know, Madison, share with me, if you would, if there's something going on sports wise, Cleveland wise, that really gets under your skin, that you feel you need to get off your chest. Now would be a good time to let it all out, to go nuclear, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of the things about the Browns, right, is we've pretty much been the pillar of instability throughout since 1999, up until recently. We've got a front office that I think maybe not right now, but a decent amount of people trusted once we made the playoffs. We're feeling a little bit better about our coach. He won Coach of the Year. And we're a little hesitant to make any kind of changes, right? Even though we've seen some evidence to the contrary, maybe we do need to make some adjustments to the staff, what have you. Like someone effectively kind of has to be a fall guy. And, you know, stability is good until it's not. I think one of the things that I would like to maybe just, you know, reference for the Browns, if you will, is when the Cavs decided to cut ties with David Blatt mid-season. Not the most optimal time, you know, just he didn't have buy-in, right? Like he has X's and O's all day. I think David Blatt, I mean, he's a super smart guy, knows basketball very well, but could not get his players motivated. They didn't trust him. They didn't listen to him for that reason. There was a lot of tension there. And I think you're seeing something similar with the Browns now. And we're just not willing to pull the trigger on that. And I think we've had plenty of evidence special teams wise. I mean, our special teams has been in the bottom of the league the last 2 years. I'm sure they're somewhere down there this year, given all of the issues we've had, I'll say, with the special teams onside kicks, both directions, both kicking and receiving. You know, muffed punts, all that stuff. Defense has been a mess. Obviously, a lot of players out of position, not lined up correctly. There's got to be some ownership of it, and we're not willing to kind of cut ties with that because we like that stability, I think. We need to kind of make the tough call, and it is a tough call. And same with players. I mean, we're holding on to players because we drafted them when they haven't proven to be anything. Anthony Schwartz comes to mind. I mean, I'm sure he's a great kid. But not producing on the field, not really seeing a ton of snaps right now either. Like he's taking up a roster spot. What's really the point? Let's give a young player from the practice squad a chance if, you know, we think that there could be more potential there. You know, like I'd like to see maybe like, you know, I don't know, Mike Woods get a chance in some of those positions, you know, that kind of thing.
Excellent point.
We have plenty of people who I think we could throw out there and like, let's see, they played well in preseason, give them a chance. Anthony Schwartz dropped a lot of balls in preseason, and yet we're holding on to him. Demetric Felton, same way. Like, you know, what are we using him for now? Sometimes we'll sprint him across in motion, but that's it. We don't even give him the ball. So we're just holding on to players to hold on to them because there are guys, and we got to just learn to let go. And the best do know when that time is. And I think we're letting that time pass us by, and it's going to hurt us in the long run. So that's what's under my.
That's what's under your skin.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, I got to kind of take what you said there in a nutshell. I'll quote one of my favorites from growing up, Bart Simpson. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, something that's got me nuclear, let me tell you, is when I go into work on a Monday morning after the Browns have lost, or after any sporting event and one of my teams has lost, and some person is so clueless, they see me wearing team apparel every day, and they're gloating about their team winning. And they're like, how'd your team do? What do you mean, how did my team do? You got to know your audience, folks. You've got to know your audience. Don't come in here and be all happy and whatnot. I'm miserable, okay? I'm miserable. I sat through 3 stinking hours on a stinking Sunday afternoon. I am miserable and heartbroken with the Browns. You go to sleep pissed off. You wake up pissed off on Monday morning. Heck, I had to, you know, I can't stand it. You gotta be more aware of your surroundings. You just got to be more aware of your surroundings and your fellow coworkers. And that has me going nuclear. It's a long time problem, and hopefully people will start getting a clue. That would certainly make my Mondays a lot better. Either that or our teams could win.
Yeah, I mean, the easier option, it seems, would be to turn it around and just have W's and Victory Mondays, and then we're happy to answer those questions.
Yes, absolutely, Victory Mondays. I would certainly look forward to it. And, you know, on that note, you know, I'm going to call it a night here. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed the program. Once again, this is Going Nuclear. full-blown coverage of the land. Want to thank Craig Fountain for putting this all together. We are presented by Buzz Sports CLE. Again, I am Ethan Greenberg, and you can find me on Twitter at egreen4325, and you can find Madison on Twitter at madtravels24. We hope you have enjoyed tonight's program. Hopefully it's been a little insightful, and we will be back with you again next Thursday. We will be live at 7:00 p.m. And oh, look at this. The Factory of Sadness for Life. No W's in Cleveland, only L's. And as you can see, the L's are capitalized. Respect to this person. I need to write this person and have them on as a guest. They need to be a contributor to this show because I think they bring a unique reality-based fandom to our program. So I think we should look at that. So yeah, folks, again, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and join us again next week on Going Nuclear, full-blown coverage of the Browns. Madison, I'll let you say your parting words.
No, this was fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to next week. Hopefully we do sneak out a W. I'm not holding my breath for it, but maybe the Cavs will come through at least for us. We'll hope for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, folks, for tuning in, and we will look forward to seeing you again next week. Once again, I'm Ethan. For Madison Delaney, I'm Ethan Greenberg. You've been watching Going Nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land.